Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to our third in the series of parent information sessions. This one is going to answer the question that is looming in many families' minds is, my child receives Social Security supplemental income and Medicaid, and my child wants to work. How does the system work where my child can be employed and maintain both state and federal benefits? Today we are privileged to have with us a representative from the Texas Workforce Commission's Workforce Solutions, previously known as DARS, the Department of Assisted and Rehabilitative Services. And Ms. Gooseby is going to tell us a little bit about the change in the name and to assure you that the services will remain the same, and how Social Security looks at employment and work incentive programs to promote work with persons with disabilities. So at this point, I am going to turn the program over to Mrs. Gooseby from the Texas Workforce Solution.
All right. Hi, how are y'all doing this evening? Thank y'all for coming out. As she said before, I'm Montisha. I actually work out of the Conroe office. I am the unit program specialist over there. And prior to that position, I was a transition counselor for 10 years, working with Klein ISD and Magnolia ISD. So I am very familiar with our transition services and our employment services and how Social Security and all of that stuff comes into play. So before I get really started into the Social Security piece of it, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little background about our agency and our program and our services, for those of you who might not know about it. All right. So September 1st, 2016, the agency that we knew as Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services, DARS, was dissolved. Okay, so our name was changed. Our name was changed from DARS to Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And like when you get married, I know when I got married, it took me a long time to latch on to that new name. It's taken us a while to kind of latch on to our new name, and we often, even ourselves as employees, are still calling ourselves DARS. And I call my clients and I'm like, this is Montisha and I'm with Texas Workforce, DARS, it's easier just to say DARS. So you'll hear that interchangeably. Sometimes people have gotten confused. They've come to our office for appointments and they've gone to the workforce center thinking that they had an appointment over there. So it's a little confusing. But just know that we are the vocational rehabilitation part of Texas Workforce Solutions. So they still do what they do as far as job searching and unemployment and all the services that they provide. And then we will do the vocational rehabilitation part of it. Hopefully, in the next 2 years, we will all be one big happy family housed in the same place. We haven't quite figured out how we're going to do that yet, and so as of right now, only major change is our name, okay? Our eligibility criteria and all of that has remained the same, and I'll go over that in a minute. The programs that was transferred over to Texas Workforce Commission include the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. That's our most popular program, the one that most people are most familiar with, our business enterprises, and the Independent Living Services Program for individuals who are blind. All of those programs went over to Texas Workforce Commission. We also had a program called Comprehensive Rehabilitation Services, and that was for individuals who had traumatic brain injuries or spinal cord injuries. That program actually went over to DADS, as well as our Independent Living Services Program. That program went over to DADS. And why did all this happen? Well, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act calls for us to all be under one agency, Texas Workforce Commission and what we now used to know as DARS, because we received similar funding, and so therefore they wanted us all to be together. So now we are a blended family. So, alrighty. I want this to be very casual. I really don't want to talk the whole time. So you guys feel free to stop me at any time and ask any question about anything or make a comment, whatever. I'm totally fine with that. So basically, the agency, the Vocational Rehabilitation Program, we serve youth and students with disabilities. That's the population that we're targeting. But I want to make it clear that we serve anybody with a disability. So disability can occur at any age. So we serve anybody with a disability that needs help with post-secondary training or employment. Everything we do through our agency is to prepare your students to go to work or maintain employment or advance in employment. Everything we do has to be about work. Okay, and our services are eligibility and need-based. So when they're in school, they have that IEP, that individualized education plan. With us, they'll get an individualized plan for employment. No two students will get the exact same services. It's really based on what they need, what the needs are, and where they are. Okay. All right. Now, vocational rehabilitation services, you may be eligible, as I said before, if you have a disability. So that's the first criteria. You have to have a disability. So many of our students, they come to us, they either receiving special education services or they're on a 504 plan. So they have to have a disability. There are some students who have disabilities that are not served by either. So, and that's okay too. They don't have to necessarily be on a 504 plan or on an IEP, okay? So they have to have a disability. The second criteria is that that disability has to be a substantial barrier to employment. What does that mean? Meaning that they need more help than a non-disabled peer would need to enter the workforce. That's pretty much all that means, okay? And then they require our services, okay? So that we have some services that they need in order to go to work, and so therefore they may be eligible, okay? Also, they have to be able to obtain competitive employment. Competitive employment, meaning they have to go to work with other individuals who are not disabled, okay? And the goal is that they would be able to sustain that employment after our services are over, okay? All right, so what disabilities do we serve? All of them. It doesn't matter. Behavior and mental health conditions. We serve individuals with intellectual disabilities. We serve students who have autism. We serve students who have learning disabilities. We serve students who have physical disabilities. I mean, there hasn't been a disability that I've encountered that we said, oh no, we don't serve that disability. We serve all disabilities. And what we're looking at is not just the disability, but how it's impacting that individual's ability to go to work. Okay. I want to put a little footnote in here about our blind services. We were two separate entities, blind services and rehabilitation services. Again, because of the changes with WIOA, we had to come together. So eventually down the road, blind services will be in the field offices. Currently, blind services is in one office in Houston. And so that we're working to change that to where the blind services will be in all of the different field offices as well.
Okay, so help me with this, because it was my impression before this change that blind services in terms of DARS only covered them until they were 21. Is this going to be covering persons with visual disabilities throughout their life?
We always have,
oh, okay.
And that you're thinking about the transition services, and that's kind of our transition services in the high school is up to age 22. We line up right with what the school says, and it used to be with blind services and with us, when a student graduated from high school, they moved on to a different program or a different counselor or whatever. We're working to change that so there's not a disruption in services and there's a continuity. As long as that counselor is still there in that position, that student will continue to work with that counselor until they're done with their services. Alrighty, pre-employment transition services. So, one of the things that we have found as an agency, we've been doing transition now as a program for about, as long as I've been with the agency, which has been about 11 years. That's when we had the 100 transition counselors that we created those positions, and we started going into the schools. prior to us going into the schools, it was kind of the school gave you a brochure and say, hey, there's an agency called Texas Rehab Commission. You might want to go check them out after your student graduated. And we found that when those students were not always reaching us, so we had to make a more concerted effort to get out into the schools. Well, now we're in the schools and we're finding that we're not really getting a hold of our students early enough to really prepare them for employment. And so what we're working to do with the pre-employment transition services is do all of the following. We want to prepare them for post-secondary education and employment. So when a student comes to us and they say, I want to go to college, I want to go to technical school, I want to go to trade school, we really want to be more involved in that decision making. We also want to do more job exploration with our students. We're starting to get our feet wet a little bit with summer internships and summer jobs and things like that, again, because we want the students to be more prepared when they get out into the workforce. We also looking at work-based learning experiences and on-the-job training and all those things that we used to do, co-ops and things like that we used to do, and I think we've gotten away from that. We're trying to bring all of that stuff back. It's a work in progress, but we're trying. So those are our pre-employment transition services, and we want to do that across the board for every student that comes through our doors. Not just VR, but the Texas Workforce Solutions Employment Office, also the schools, and any other education institution has been charged with to do this.
Yeah, and that's why I just want to make clear to everybody, these are the services that we provide in the public school system.
Right. All right, so the other services that we provide include a student comes in our doors, and like I said, we have to establish eligibility criteria. We do a lot of evaluations sometimes just because maybe the school records may not give us enough information that we need, or we do, like if they have a hearing loss, we might do some updated testing to see the significance of the hearing loss. What else do we do? We provide therapy depending on what the disability is. We do medical, wheelchairs, job placement services. Again, it's individualized to the student and their disability and what they need in order to go to work. Okay, so everybody doesn't necessarily get all of those services, but that's some of the services that we provide. Anybody have any questions about that?
Is there any meeting on the Spanish?
Spanish.
Is there a meeting, this is going to be conducted in Spanish? I was to have a Spanish interpreter here, and she is not available at this time, so. We can probably try and schedule something along those lines, though.
All righty.
On the job matching,
Yeah.
what kind of services does that entail?
It's mostly like career assessments. Career assessments, vocational evaluations, things like that. All right, I went ahead and included all of our local offices up there. If you're interested in applying for our program and our services, these are all of our local offices, and then that's the website. If you want to refer us, a friend to us or whatever, those are all of our local offices. The North office is in the Greenspoint area. My office is in Conroe. We have an office in Humble, and we also have an office in Tomball. So these are all of our local offices.
You can go to any of them?
Yeah, you can go to any office you want to. And I have this slide again at the end too. Alrighty. So I'm gonna get into the main reason why I was asked to come is to talk about Social Security benefits. I'm not an expert. I like to say I know enough information to be dangerous. So at least to empower you to at least ask the questions, okay, and dispel any myths or whatever that you might have about Social Security and benefits and all of that good stuff, okay? So when we talk about Social Security, we start talking about disability. Now I was having a conversation with my friend over here. There's varying levels of what each agency considers a disability. I want to start by saying that. Social Security is the granddaddy of disability. So if you qualify for Social Security disability, then we kind of say, oh, you meet their criteria for being a person with a disability, we agree. So you can come on in with us, okay? But just because a student is on an IEP in school or 504 plan doesn't necessarily mean they're going to qualify for DARS. Just because a student qualifies for DARS doesn't necessarily mean they're going to qualify for Social Security. And we get that question a lot, but I just want to be upfront about that, okay? So, all righty. So, how often have you heard, if I go to work, I will lose my benefits? We get that question almost daily at the office. I can only earn a certain amount of money each month, or I'm going to lose my benefits. I can't get the skills and experience I need for a career without losing my benefits, okay? If I go to work and then stop working, I won't be able to get my cash back benefits or my Medicaid, my Medicare back. So, and if I go to work, Social Security will send me a letter asking for a lot of money back. All right. So we're going to talk about using the Social Security work incentives and reducing the fear and misunderstanding about the effect of work on the benefits. We also going to try to prevent crises from happening. And we want to improve employment and economic outcomes, okay? So that's kind of our goal. So these are some of the basic terms when we're going to talk about. SSA is the Social Security Administration. And then you have SSI, which is Supplemental Security Income. And you have SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance. People use these terms interchangeably. People say, do you get Social Security? We're going to really talk about what's the difference between those two. I call them pots of money, okay? And then we're also going to talk about substantial gainful activity, work incentives, and then HUD. We're going to talk a little bit about HUD. All right. All right, so SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Most of, yes, sir.
Can we get the slides afterwards?
Yeah, can I email them to you?
Email to me, and if you leave your email address over here, I'll make sure that you get them.
Okay.
Also, want to let you know that you can go to Klein Flicks and get the video as well.
Fine.
Klein
The
Flicks.
district's YouTube page.
The district's YouTube page, there we go.
So kleinisd.net, top right, or the YouTube logo, just click the YouTube logo.
Awesome.
You've got past two TVs on there
Yes,
also.
that's to have been on.
I know. Cool. All righty. So SSI, majority of the students that we work with in the transition age are on SSI. And they're disabled by the Social Security Administration's definition of what disability is. That's why I said in the beginning, just because a student qualifies on an IEP or they qualify for DARS doesn't necessarily mean they're going to meet Social Security's administration definition of what a disability is, okay? Also, little to no assets. They can't have more than $2,000 in the bank. Little to no income, all right? And the benefit amount is $733 a month. That's the maximum that they can get on SSI. Okay?
Is this based on parent income at all?
This is not based on parent income. This is the adult model. I'll talk a little bit about childhood SSI in a minute, but this is for the adults. So around age 18 is when they stop looking at mom and dad's income, and that student becomes a household of one.
Even though they live with the parent.
Now that gets tricky. If they live with mom and dad, they might get $467.50 a month if you do not charge them rent.
What if we charge them rent?
You charge them rent, they get $733 a month.
So we would just need to say that.
Well, you charge them rent. All right, you charge them rent. They're responsible for contributing to the household, food and shelter. Therefore, they'll get the full cash benefit.
And you will need a paper trail.
Yes.
Bank account and rent receipts.
Yes, that is correct. You just can't say it. You have to show, you have to prove it.
It could be $50. The rent needs to be
At $250 a month, I believe, is what they,
substantial amount of
yeah.
their Social Security
Now,
Okay.
when do they apply for that? When they're actually 18 or after they graduate?
I've heard everything from about 6 months before the 18th birthday. If they're on childhood SSI around the 18th, 19th birthday, they're going to reevaluate them for adult SSI. So.
What was her question again?
She said, when should you apply for SSI?
Okay.
Yeah, and I said around the 18th birthday. They'll take the application about 6 months prior to the 18th birthday. All right, and then the health care benefit with SSI is Medicaid. You get SSI, Medicaid comes with it.
You have to take it, you can't deny it.
Take what?
In the Medicaid, you can't just get SSI and put them on your private insurance.
You can keep them on your private insurance, yes ma'am. Yes, you can.
Will you get less per month? Or that-
No, you don't. There is a program called HIP, HIPP, and that will reimburse you your private insurance premium for keeping your child on your private insurance. It's another incentive that they have available for you. So, all right, any other questions about SSI? All right. All right, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. The main difference between SSI and SSDI is it's insurance. You put money into it, so therefore you get it out. There's no resource limits on the SSDI. Anybody can get it if you've paid into it. Okay. The other way a student would qualify for SSDI is because maybe mom or dad is retired, deceased, or on disability themselves. So therefore, the student would qualify for SSDI, and it's automatic. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay? So if they qualify for Social Security disability and mom and dad are one of those three, they're going to get SSDI.
Okay, explain to me again what SSDI is.
Social Security Disability Insurance. So somebody, either the student themselves, either the student themselves or the parent is receiving SSDI. They're retired or they're deceased. So the student has met the definition of having a disability, right? And so when they go and they're looking at this application, they're going to determine whether or not that student needs to go to SSDI or SSI.
When you say the student's parents might be retired or a couple other things.
Retired, deceased, or on SSDI themselves.
Does the student have to be a minor then?
No, no, not necessarily. As long as that disability was established prior to the 25th birthday. So that's how they qualify. Huh?
We've got a 24-year-old and we're working on it.
Yeah, if that disability is established before that 25th birthday, then yes, they can get mom or dad's SSDI benefits. Now, if mom and dad are still working, they can't get the SSDI benefit, they get the SSI benefit. But at the time in which mom or dad unfortunately pass away or retire, or they themselves might end up on disability, then they roll off of SSI and they roll on to SSDI.
Which is better?
It can be, yes.
Which one is better?
Oh, you said which one is better? I'm gonna get to that. Okay, I'm gonna get to that.
Provide for them. What does this provide for them?
It's the same thing. It's a cash benefit. And yeah, but the amount of money will change. And it's possible that a student can get SSI or SSDI because the minimum amount of money that they can get is $733. So that's what they're working towards. So they might get $500 in SSDI and $233 in SSI, so they can get both. And it's based on however much mom or dad paid in. Now, if the student starts working, guess what? They start paying in too, and it's possible that a student can earn enough money to roll over to the SSDI side. It's heavy, I know, it's heavy. All righty. Any other questions about SSDI? So there are no assets limits, and that's a good thing, okay? I've had parents who come to me and grandpa left them, you know, this land or this house or whatever, and with SSI, they cannot have more than $2,000 in assets. With SSDI, there are no asset limits, so that's the main difference, okay?
Does that $2,000 include like a car?
No, this is cash, liquid assets. All righty. All right, so let's talk about some of the SSDI work incentives. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because this is more for the older generation, us. But for people who are on SSDI and they want to go back to work, they get what they call a 9-month trial work period. Well, they can work and they can earn. There's no limit on how much they earn, and it's a 9-month rolling period where they can earn money and keep their cash benefits, nothing to be affected. It's exactly what it is. It's a trial work period. They're going to try out work, see how they like it, see how it affects them, okay? Once they roll out of that trial work period, then that's when the benefits can be affected. Okay, but also with SSDI, there's impairment-related work expenses, meaning that there are certain expenses that a person with a disability might have that they can write off and keep part of that cash benefit. And those things could be like transportation, specialized transportation, or attended care, or I don't know, they might need a driver, just different things like that in order for them to work. And so those are the impairment-related work expenses, okay? They also can qualify for a subsidy, meaning that if they're going to work and there are certain parts of the job that they're not able to do and their employer is providing a subsidy, like they're taking pieces of the job and giving it to somebody else or not requiring them to do that, they can still keep part of that cash benefit for that, okay? There's also the extended period of eligibility, so meaning that that person, they go to work and they're working, they can work up to 5 years. And if something happens within that 5 years, guess what? All they got to do is walk into the Social Security office. It's a one-page form. They fill it out. Cash benefits come right back. Okay, so there are a lot of incentives for them to try out work. That's the SSDI side of the house. And you really have to, if your child is on Social Security, you really need to know which pot of money they're getting it from, because that's going to affect which work incentives they can use. Okay. All right. Alrighty, I kind of already talked about the extended period of eligibility and the expedited reinstatement. That's that little one-page application you fill out if for some reason the student stops working, and they can go right back onto the cash benefits for Social Security. Now, if the cash benefits for Social Security stop, guess what? They still get their Medicare. Okay, on the SSDI side of the house. Now, my friend right here, she asked me, which one's better, SSI or SSDI? The downside with SSDI is when a student qualifies for SSDI, they get Medicare. They don't get Medicaid, they get Medicare. They have to wait 2 years before the Medicare kicks in. On the SSI side of the house, they get Medicaid immediately. As soon as they get SSI, Medicaid comes immediately. SSDI side of the house, you gotta wait 2 years. That's for everybody on SSDI. Not just the students, that's for anybody on SSDI. They have to wait 2 years before the medical coverage kicks in. Okay. But most of our students are gonna be on the SSI side of things most of the time. All right, let's talk about SSI. SSI, with SSDI, I forgot to mention, it's an all or nothing benefit, okay? So after you earn what they call more than substantial gainful activity, which for this year, it's $1,130 per month after the trial work period, After the grace period, you've tried out work and you've been doing all that. Once you start earning more than substantial gainful activity, and for SSDI, it's $1,130 a month, no more cash benefit. It's all or nothing. With the SSI side of it, it's a deduction. So for every about $2 you earn, you're going to lose $1 of that SSI cash benefit, automatic. So it doesn't. So some people say, well, how much money can I earn and they not affect my benefits? Well, it depends on which pot of money you're pulling from. So that's why I say it's very important to understand the SSI versus the SSDI. Okay. So let's say, for example, a student is getting $500 a month in income. Then that SSI check can be reduced by about $250 for that month. And SSI runs about 2 months late. So any income that I report right now for January is not going to be affected probably until around the March or April check. Does that make sense? So it's not instant. All right. And then, of course, there are other work incentives that you can qualify for on the SSI side of things. I hope I'm not confusing y'all, because y'all faces are okay.
I get the same reaction when I talk about this too.
All right. Whew. So let's say your SSI cash benefit stops. Now, $733 a month in my world is not a lot of money. It's not, you really can't live on that. So really, what is the big push to get on SSI to begin with? It's the medical coverage for a lot of folks. It's the Medicaid. If your student can earn up to $34,000 a year and keep their SSI cash benefits. The incentive is always to work. I repeat myself. I'm sorry. Wait. I said that wrong. If your student earns up to they can earn up to $34,000 a year and keep Medicaid, not the cash benefit, to keep Medicaid. They can keep Medicaid. Okay? And that's really the main reason why a lot of families that I talk to, they apply for the SSI, is because of the medical coverage. There are certain things that Medicaid will pay for that your private insurance will not. So that's the main reason why. Okay? And that is called a 1619B. It's also known as Medicaid buy-in. Okay? So your student earns $25,000 a year. He's not going to receive a cash benefit anymore, but he will continue to receive his Medicaid, and that's called 1619B. People with disabilities who are working are the only individuals who can purchase Medicaid. And that's essentially what your child would be doing. They would be purchasing Medicaid. And their premium could be anywhere from about $0. It's kind of based upon their income, their premium. So, all righty.
Excuse me. You have to be on Social Security supplemental income as an adult, then work your way off of it in order to maintain that Medicaid. Am I correct?
Yes, you have to be working. You have to be working. And the beautiful thing about Medicaid buy-in, there's no amount of hours you have to be working or days a week you have to be working. You just have to be working. I work on the adult side of things now, and I have some substitute teachers who are disabled, and they work an assignment maybe once every other week, and they can receive Medicaid buy-in. So the incentive is always to work. Okay. All righty. All right, so I talked about the 1619B, the Medicaid buy-in. I talked about the continuation of Medicare for the SSDI side, that you can continue to receive even once your cash benefit stops. There is also something called Medicare buy-in, and then SSDI or earned off SSI, Texas Medicaid buy-in. Okay, so let me talk about this for a little bit. You don't have to be on SSI to get Medicaid buy-in. I'm gonna rewind and say it again. You do not have to be on SSI to get Medicaid buy-in. You can earn off of SSI and automatically roll over to Medicaid buy-in, but you don't have to start off on SSI to get Medicaid buy-in. So, if you have a child and your child has a disability and they are working, but for whatever reason they've been denied SSI, or you don't even want to apply, and that's fine. They can still qualify for Medicaid buy-in. They just have to have that disability. And so that's the beauty of that is, because remember I said Social Security is kind of the granddaddy of all disabilities. So even though your child may or may not qualify for SSI or SSDI, if they have a disability and they're working, they can purchase Medicaid buy-in. It's the most underutilized resource that we have to offer in the state of Texas. I don't know why people don't know about it, but I'm telling you about it, so tell all your friends. Is it okay? Medicaid buy-in. Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Okay. Is it CHIP or Medicaid he's on?
I applied for Medicaid, but then they sent me to CHIP, and they sent me the health insurance market.
Okay.
And I got different people working on it.
I don't really know.
Give me 2 months.
Is he also on SSI?
No.
He's not. Okay. Well, I'm not sure the answer to your question, but everything I'm talking about here is about SSI, SSDI, Medicaid. So there are other ways to qualify for Medicaid, but I'm not really sure in that situation. It's a little bit different than what I'm talking about today. Yeah, it might be. Yeah, yeah. With the SSI, you wouldn't have to keep going through that with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question because there are a lot of different ways that people can qualify for Medicaid. I'm just talking about 3 of them, but there are all kinds of other ways that people can qualify for Medicaid and for different reasons. But for purposes of my presentation, it's really about the work incentives and SSI, SSDI. So.
Does it make sense to apply for Medicaid if the parents are having a good insurance?
Well, at 26, that's the longest you can keep them on your insurance. So, I don't know. Mm-hmm.
But my sort of thought is, if something should happen and we lose that, it'd be better for us to have some kind of doctors, looking for some kind of doctors that would work for as he gets older that he could stay with. So we're sort of trying to transition between the two. So it wouldn't just be a cutoff and shop. It would be sort of blended.
Yeah.
You're saying that you're trying to get insurance for, even though you have personal insurance, you're still
We do
trying
have
to get.
Medicaid and we do have SSI. How much we use the Medicaid, we, like the doctors, he's sort of grown all up with, but now he's 21. And so we're looking to find adult doctors and smooth transition now, even though he's on our insurance. Because if something should happen to it, or to us, or as it gets older,
You've already
we've already established people that can trust him.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make a point to utilize it to the best that we can.
Mm-hmm. And they can have both. Like I said before, they can have private insurance and they can have the Medicaid. But your private insurance, you can only keep them on, unless some law gets changed, you can only keep them on your insurance until they're 26. So.
I have a question about SSDI.
Yes, ma'am.
If I'm an educator and I pay into, it's not Social Security, so that doesn't count if I retire from teaching and, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
that-
So she asked the question about SSDI. It's based on if you paid in. Mom and dad paid in. If you didn't pay in, then therefore,
If dad's paid in,
then he would get dad's.
but he's still working and I'm the one that retires.
Right, but you're not
still-
getting any Social Security retirement, are you?
No.
You have to be getting Social Security retirement
Okay.
Yeah, not just retire, just
So he would
Social
have to
Security.
retire for it to be this SSDI.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. All righty. I'm going to talk a little bit about the student earned income exclusion. That is a special work incentive for students through the age of 22 who are working. It's a special benefit for students through the age of 22 who are working and receiving SSI. Okay, it's called the Student Earned Income Exclusion. All right. So what it basically does is it allows the student to earn up to $7,180 a year, which is a lot of money for a teenager, and keep their SSI cash benefit. It's an incentive up through the age of 22. So your high school student who wants to go work at Splash Town for the summer, they can do it, and their SSI cash benefit will not be affected. Okay, and it starts over every year at the first of the year. So they could do it every year through the age of 22. Your college student who wants to work, this is a good incentive for them to work. All they have to do is turn in what they call a verification of enrollment, and the student, the registrar's office at your high school will be able to provide that for you, or the campus, if they're in college or whatever, can provide that for them, and they don't have to have their SSI cash benefits affected. That's one of the work incentives that they have available for that student.
Can you do this retroactively? I've got a student in a situation that came
Yes.
for a life readiness
Yes.
program.
Yes.
He's now
Yes.
working part-time, now working full-time. I'm scared to death because he's been collecting his Social Security.
It can be
At an
retroactive.
HCS facility, and I need to go to Social Security, so I need to ask for this.
Yes. You can bring the verification of enrollment and just tell them you want to, you need to show them. Now, this is supposed.
This is a student that's working, not in school anymore.
Right. Now, Social Security told us that it's supposed to happen automatically. It may not happen automatically. So I always encourage people to just be proactive and go in there and tell them, student is working, but they're still in school. Here's the verification of enrollment. He's good.
When you receive SSI, they say you have to notify them if you're
You
out of
do.
the job anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, see that the House didn't do that. But he's no longer in school. He left last May and has been working up until now.
Oh.
That's not gonna work.
Was he working at the time?
Yes.
He was in school?
Yes.
Well, he can count the time that he was in school and working.
Okay.
Yeah, and it can be retroactive.
All right.
Any other questions about that? So your students that are in, work-based learning programs, they have early release or whatever, they want a summer job, whatever, they can do that and still keep their cash benefit. And this is really good for students who they want to save up for something, a car or whatever. This is a really good incentive for them.
Question? I was wondering about savings, and I keep thinking that $2,000 in the bank, so how do you save?
You can also write what they call a pass. Now, it allows you to save for a work-related goal.
If you come to my next parent information session, a person from the state of Texas and the Able account, which is Achieving Better Life Experiences, will show you how you can use that fund in order to save as much money as you need, up to $300,000 for a person with a disability. They will be coming and presenting next month. The flyers are over here, so that will answer that question.
Yeah.
All these parent information sessions, great questions because they all roll into each other.
Yeah.
What happens after the age of 22?
They don't qualify for that no more. So sorry. But there's other things that they might be able, like the impairment-related work expenses that I was talking about. If there's specific things that they need as a person with a disability in order for them to work, then they can write those things off and still keep part of that cash benefit. All of these work incentives are really about keeping part of that cash benefit. So they also will help as far as when you start thinking down the road and your student starts earning more than $34,000 a year and they need to keep that Medicaid, those impairment related work expenses will help bring their income down to keep them on the Medicaid. So. Alrighty. So there aren't any work incentives to help me reach self-sufficiency. I talked about the PASS, and then the individual development account. That's kind of like that ABLE account that she was talking about. So there are other incentives out there to kind of get you around that $2,000 resource limit, but you have to be specific with what you're going to do with that money, okay? They have to approve what you're going to do with that money. You just can't put it aside and say, oh, I was saving it for blah, blah, blah. There's actual paperwork that you have to turn in to Social Security to show what you're going to do with that money. Okay. All righty. Sometimes we have students who are on low-income housing, HUD housing, things like that, and because they're on SSI or SSDI and they start working, and they're concerned that the SSI or the working could potentially affect them qualifying for low-income housing. There is an incentive for that as well. They call it earned income disregard, meaning that the HUD housing people will not hold it against you because you worked, okay? So, all right. Any other questions about any other work incentives? Okay. All right, so the dreaded overpayments. Working always results in overpayments. Not necessarily, okay? You want to be proactive in letting Social Security know that your child is working, and you have to submit their check stubs every month. We recommend that you send a certified mail return receipt so that you have proof that somebody got it, and save copies. Save copies forever. Save your copies, okay? And this is kind of hard for some of our guys to be able to do this on their own, and so they really need help with that, and we encourage you guys to help them with that. Like I said, if you really want to get into the deep part of it, or you're not sure how to do that, there are people that are called benefit planners that work. They receive funding from Social Security through the Houston Center for Independent Living, and they eat and breathe this stuff. That's all they do, and so they can help you in terms of reporting the wages and things like that. Okay, so some tips include getting a receipt from Social Security to document what you reported, know the rules. Overpayments under $1,000 can be automatically waived. If you get a letter saying that, hey, you owe us money or anything like that, no matter how scary it sounds, don't ignore it, okay? So. There are waivers, there are payment plans, there are all kinds of things that you can work out. And you can go back, like we said before, the student might have been working, they might qualify for that student earned income exclusion, or they might have impairment related work expenses that they can write off. So there are other things that you could be writing off to prevent those overpayments. But they will happen from time to time because the system runs about 2 months behind. So you have to keep good documentation of what's going on. And those benefits planners can help you guys as far as how to keep all of that organized, because it can get to be a little bit overwhelming. So. All right, know who to call and what to say. One of the things that our agency did a couple of years ago is really try to provide us as vocational rehabilitation counselors more training about Social Security. We call benefits subject matter utilization resource facilitators, and because we like acronyms, because we're a government agency, we call ourselves Smurfs. I don't know why. So, so every office should have a Smurf, at least one. That's a good place to start if you have questions about Social Security, disability, and working. And if we can't answer your question, like I said, we can refer you to one of those benefits planners, those work incentive coordinators. And like I said, they eat and breathe this stuff. This is what they do for a living. And so they can answer some of the more difficult questions that you have, because every case is different. So SSDI cash works in stages to make sure health and or cash benefits are protected. So what that means is that if you get on SSDI, it's really hard to get off of it. I mean, it's built in such a way that they really want to make sure that if you're working, that you continue to receive your benefits, okay? And so that's why they have the trial work period, an extended period of eligibility, and expedited reinstatement, because they want you to be able to continue to receive those benefits, okay? Medicare continues as long as you get a check, and continues even after you lose your cash benefits for many years, and you can also qualify for buy-in if you work. Okay, SSI cash amount is determined by a formula. When you work, you will always have more money at the end, even after taxes. So remember, we talked about that $733 a month. Your student is always going to earn more money by working than by not working. Always. Always, always. $733 a month is the maximum that they will ever get on SSI. The incentive is always to work. So even if the student makes $500 a month, he's still going to get more income in the end by working. Okay? And everybody always likes to ask me, like, okay, well, how much money can he earn and still keep his SSI check? Cash benefit. The amount is $1,500. $1,551 is actually the amount that he would earn, and then he would zero out. He or she would zero out that SSI cash benefit.
How much a month again?
$1,551 a month before that SSI cash benefits goes down to zero. Remember? Mm-hmm.
If they made $1,500 whatever in 1 month and then didn't make it the next month,
yeah. See, you see the roller coaster there? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they do get the SSI payments back after that?
So it goes up and down based on how much they earn. So let's say that 1 month it goes down to zero. The next month they might get $200 in a cash benefit. Let's say the next month they don't work at all, so then they'll get the whole $733. It just depends. But remember, it runs behind. So if they stop working in March, they might not see that full SSI cash benefit come back till about May or June.
Is there any amount of work that would cause them to lose that SSI benefit in the future?
The cash benefits, that's the $1,551.
But then if they exceed that amount, then they don't have any income later, they would have the SSI cash benefits?
Back. Mm-hmm. It's called expedited reinstatement.
How long do we have to be making over the $1,500?
Yeah, if they consistently make over that much.
It doesn't matter, because we're talking about cash benefits and Medicaid. They can earn up to $34,000 a year and keep the Medicaid, but it's a month-to-month situation. So you have to keep reporting that income to keep the Medicaid buy-in anyway. So.
How do you report the income? Is that online? Is that
No.
something you have to send in manually?
Well, I've heard all all kinds of ways. For SSI, I've been told that there is a phone app. I've also seen where people, they mail in the copies. You can carry them in. The main thing is you want to keep documentation of what you're reporting.
I have a low IQ kid, and I can answer that. I reported it. It's through the phone. There's also a web app for your phone that you can actually do, but it doesn't work as good as the one that you just call. And then the Social Security every month sends you a note that says, this is how much you made, this is how much you recorded, kind of like what you're saying, you need to save those.
So, that was a good question. So, yeah, there is no, there's no magic formula with the SSI on if he makes exactly this amount of money. You know, what we know for this year is $1551. That's where it zeroes out. But any amount of money that he earns above $85, it's going to affect his cash benefit. They give you $85 a month to earn. So anything above that is going to affect the SSI cash benefit. All right.
Question.
Yes.
Investments. She's, right now I'm looking at further ahead. So I can do pretty much everything as far as for our child, but as we get older, obviously that's going to be an issue. So assuming that some benefits like this and I'm providing this and we're creating investments,
right?
At some point, if the investment itself is paying more than $1551 per month in return, is that when that?
Oh, this $1551 is for earned income from work.
Only work.
Only
so if
work.
They're making savvy investments or whatever, then it doesn't.
Because remember, SSI is a need-based program.
Okay.
So your resources cannot be over $2,000. Now, there is special needs trust and ABLE accounts and all this other stuff that you can do to protect that assets to be able to set aside that money for him. But from my understanding, those assets have to be protected and they should not be in his name. But you would want to consult an attorney for that, an elder law attorney to help you with that.
Just a saver, like our child is a saver. She's always been frugal, so if she saves a certain amount of money, it's okay for her to save that, or at some point the interest income or other investments, it can be a problem, or?
It will be a problem.
It will be a problem. As soon as you hit more than the
$2,000, yes, sir.
Taking everything out of her name now.
Yeah.
in income, you mean?
Yeah, income. Because they count everything.
If she owns the stocks and they're worth over $2,000, it doesn't even have to be cashed out yet. She can't have that, or she can't have that.
Anything that's a liquid asset can be turned into cash of a value over $2,000 or more, you become ineligible due to asset limitations.
So a trust or something like
You
that.
have to hide it.
What about
I tell my parents that we never, ever, ever put anything in the child's name or social security number except a dedicated bank account once they turn 18 and are receiving their SSI benefits and it goes into that account. Nothing else is attached to your child's name or social security number.
So if she has like a college fund, you need to get it out of her name?
Yes.
She can't answer that.
Can't answer that. That might incriminate her.
We took all bank accounts. I mean, a few years ago, she just turned 18, but we took all money out of an account for her and took it off, her name off of it, because that will show us.
Yeah, because SSI is a needs-based benefit. It's a needs-based benefit. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not like SSDI where anybody can get it because it's what you paid into it. SSI is a needs-based system. So it's...
Does that include a 401k while you're working?
I'm sorry?
Does that include a 401k while you're working that you wouldn't be able to invest in a 401k?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
You can't invest in anything unless you hide the assets.
Now, eventually, if your son or daughter is working and they're investing in a 401k and all that stuff, they're going to earn off of SSI anyway. And they're going to be paying into SSDI.
Well, we're not on yet.
Okay.
He's been saving.
Right.
He has a little bit of
Right. So in an ideal world, that your child would start earning money and they earn themselves off of SSI, they can eventually would earn themselves onto, if that makes sense, SSDI, and where the resource limits won't matter. And so that's why I said it depends on where the money is coming from, which program you're tied to. If you're tied to the SSI side of the house, $2,000 is it. If you're on the SSD side, there are no resource limits. You can be Oprah Winfrey and get a SSDI. So, but
Wondering how he would qualify for SSDI. Is there a minimum you have to earn?
oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's based on your age and quarters. I have that information. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I can tell you that, but that's what it's based on. It's based on your age and the number of quarters. And quarters is based on not on time, but earnings. So people like Oprah Winfrey make all of her quarters in a day or something, you know? So yeah, it's crazy, but it's based on your age and how much money you've earned. Mm-hmm.
And that's if they
The
retire.
council only a specialized kind of an attorney to plan out things?
Like if you're talking about trust and assets and all that, yeah, I definitely recommend an elder law attorney. Mm-hmm.
What about like Texas Tomorrow Fund?
I don't know. I'm not an expert again. I don't know about that because I don't know if it's liquid or not. You know, if it can only be used for tuition, you know, that type of thing. But when you start talking about 401ks and IRAs and all of that stuff, yeah.
What about an asset being the car? In other words,
They can have a car and a house.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. The house they live in.
Right.
The house they live in. Yeah.
So if they inherit something,
If they inherit a house, they need to live there. If they don't live there,
Right.
then that's an asset.
All right.
Mm-hmm. So. Do we have any other questions or comments about SSI, SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid? Oh, good question. I meant to talk about that. So there is something called Childhood SSI. And Childhood SSI, the qualifications for that is a little bit different than it is for the adult side. With Childhood SSI, the qualifications, they're looking at other peers their same age and development. So that's why you'll see sometimes a child receive SSI as a child, and then a parent will come to me and say they turned 18 and they lost it because that disability did not meet the criteria that they have for the adult model. The adult model is looking at disability in work. The child model is looking at disability in same age developmental peers. Yes, ma'am.
For the child model, do they use your income?
Yes, because this SSI is always need-based. So
how much, if you wanted your child to receive, or your child, if a child needed to get money for SSI as a child,
right.
What's the parent's income limit?
I don't know, it's low. Yeah, it's really low.
Based on family size?
Uh-huh.
It's based on family size and whether it's earned or unearned income and whether it's a one or two family. You can look on Social Security and they'll give you that. But again, you have the same assets issue as they do as an adult. You as a parent can have a house and a car, and anything over $2,000 makes your child ineligible for SSI.
Yes. Now, children can get Medicaid and CHIP and some other things income-based, okay? But when you start talking about SSI, the cash benefit piece of it because of the disability, then that it gets even more strict. So a child can get Medicaid without getting the SSI cash benefits.
So basically what I'm understanding is that between now and the age of 18, it's all predicated on parents' income.
Parents' income, yes.
Once they turn 18, they're automatically enrolled in SSI.
No, it's no automatic. At the age of 18, they no longer look at parents' income, but they still have to meet the criteria as far as the disability.
So if a child, you know that your child is not going to be able to work.
Right.
Let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
Parents will know that.
Yeah.
So your child will not be able to work. They should qualify for that disability.
I don't know what SSI has some funny rules about what they consider work. So I don't know, I don't know if I don't know how to answer your question, because I've had parents who say my child absolutely cannot work and they still don't qualify for SSI. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't want to say that yes, your child will get SSI, because I don't want to say that, because I've seen situations where they don't get it. So it really depends. Yeah.
So once they are 18, what is the application process?
Oh, you can start online at ssa.gov. You get so far, and then they'll make an appointment for you to go in.
Okay.
So.
And if I already did that, I went through the process before he turned 18, but I didn't call, so I have to go through it all again? Do I have to call again?
What do you mean they didn't call? He was denied or what?
Well, yeah, he was denied
Okay.
because of our income. He was under the age of 18. When he turned 18, and I didn't do it like the month before he turned 18, I didn't call and say he's going to turn 18, so now I have to go through that process again.
How long has it been?
October.
I don't know, maybe. You might have to
Go
call them.
online and do it again, or call. I called and they told me, well, I thought I would go through MHMR. No, that has nothing to do with that, because I had to take him and, get him tested to make sure that he was disabled through MHMR. They helped me do the paperwork. They said, no, you just got to go through Social Security.
Okay, so like MHMR can provide you with the documentation that you need to prove the disability.
Right.
The school can do that as well, your doctor's information. But Social Security is the ones who determine whether or not he gets the SSI or the SSDI.
Yeah, it's denied, but I just have to do it all again.
When they denied it, they closed that case, so you're going to have to open up a whole new case.
Okay.
One of the other things that's confusing to parents when a child turns 18 and they're applying for Social Security supplemental income and they go online, then they get a letter that they've been denied. Social Security many times with an 18-year-old will first process them for SSDI, which means they're not going to be eligible because they haven't paid into the system. So if you get that denial letter, you need to make sure what they're denying you for. Is it the Social Security disability insurance that you're being denied for, or is it SSI? The SSI application, from what I understand from the gentleman who spoke last month, cannot be completed online. Okay? You can call 30 days, I told my parents to call 30 days before the 18th birthday, so you don't have to deal with the guardianship issue, and initiate your application for adult disability. Okay?
So what do you mean the guardianship issue? Like what, if they are already 18 and have guardianship, what?
Well, if they're already 18 and you have guardianship, it's not an issue. If they're 18 and you don't have guardianship, Social Security wants to talk to the person with the disability.
Gotcha.
What if you have power of attorney?
Power of attorney is generally accepted. Okay, but it is revocable.
By the child.
By the child.
When do we apply for the guardianship?
We're going to have, one of our other resources that you're going to have, so pick up a thing, is I'm having Texas Disability Rights come and talk about guardianship and the new alternative to guardianship, which is a supported decision maker, which you may be more interested in obtaining because in guardianship, you lose your rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution and someone else is making all decisions for you. Under supported decision maker, you become a partner as a parent with the person with a disability in decision making, and it does not require a lawyer. It requires a notary public. Okay, and so I would suggest picking up one of the flyers and maybe considering coming to that parent information session as well. Because the lawyers are going to be presenting that, okay, for free.
That's good.
With possibly follow-up.
That's real good.
On an individual basis.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I wanted to talk a little bit about, are you guys familiar with the waiver, the Medicaid waiver programs, like the home and community-based services and the class program, community-based alternatives a little bit, the big list that everybody always says to get on?
Is that the 10-year wait list?
Yes, yes,
That I've been on?
yes, yes. If you're on that waiting list, when you're, I've been around long enough to where I've seen people actually come up off the list.
Okay.
The thing that you want to make sure of when your child comes up off that list is that they're Medicaid eligible. What does that mean? So if you have your child on one of those lists, then it's important to consider the SSI. Yeah, because they have to be Medicaid eligible.
Especially for Texas home living. Generally speaking, when you get class or HCS, Medicaid comes with it, the state of Texas. But if you're on the list for HCS and they come up and say, oh, our interim Medicaid waiver program is Texas home living, without Medicaid, you cannot get those services.
Right. And I had a situation of a young guy that I was working with, and he had been working since he graduated from high school. He had this little groovy job with the oil and gas company, and his name came up on the list. And guess what? He didn't qualify because his assets exceeded $2,000.
Right. Well, the other thing is on a Medicaid waiver program, you can't make more than $1,900 a month gross.
Right.
So there's an income requirement for that. But to be eligible for class, you have to have a physical disability. To be eligible for HCS, you have to have an intellectual disability or autism. So it depends, again, with these Medicaid waiver programs, is what your child's disability is.
And so if you have Medicaid today, will you qualify for these two programs that you just spoke of?
You may, you have, basically you get on the wait list. When your name comes up, they evaluate you based on level of need, which that's the end of the evaluation. They assign you a monetary amount and you choose from a menu of services. But it's not, just because you have Medicaid doesn't make you eligible for the Medicaid waiver programs. Medicaid waiver program means it waives the Medicaid requirement that your child has to be in an institutional or residential placement in order to receive state funding services. Okay? So it's a waiver from that criteria.
Another thing that I wanted to mention too, when we're talking about childhood SSI and adult SSI, if your son or daughter was on childhood SSI and they have an open case with DARS, or now Texas Workforce Solutions VR services, that your son or daughter can remain on the SSI even though if they don't meet the criteria as an adult. So that's just a little piece of information to just FYI. You know, if your son or daughter is on childhood SSI and they don't qualify for the adult SSI, they can stay on the SSI if they have an open and active VR case.
That's awesome.
And the reason for that is because we're working to move them off of it anyway. That's our goal anyway when you come to us. We're working towards employment, so there's an incentive for you to allow you to stay on it because they have an open vocational rehabilitation case. That's a little piece of information a lot of people don't know, but sometimes parents come to us and they're like, oh, my child was getting SSI and then they turned 18 and then they lost it. And I say, hey, go back over there and tell them you got an open VR case, and then they get the SSI reinstated. So.
That's a golden nugget.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So, anything else? Anybody else? Vocational rehabilitation. See, we like our acronyms. Vocational rehabilitation, VR, vocational rehabilitation. That's what it is. And we're probably going to be called that even more now that we're merged with Texas Workforce Solutions, because we're going to be the vocational rehabilitation services program. So.
We thought it was voluntary retirement.
Huh?
We thought it was voluntary retirement.
Yeah.
So. You were talking about that SSD.
Yes.
That if parents are retired and receiving Social Security, a child with a disability is eligible for SSDI?
If they meet their criteria for SSDI.
Aside from disability, like criteria?
The Social Security's criteria for disability.
So you have to take them in and be evaluated and all this stuff? Okay?
Well, you can provide them with documents that you already have. If you don't have those documents, sometimes they will send you for evaluations.
So let's say you were turned down by SSI. But SSDI is...
It's the same criteria for both. That's a good question. The criteria to qualify for SSI and SSDI is the same. Once you qualify, then they have to determine which pot of money you're going to get it from. It's going to be either SSI or SSDI, but the criteria to qualify is the same for the adult side, yes. Mm-hmm.
If our child has her diagnosis of autism years back.
Yes.
Does it still count to be qualified for SSI?
It depends.
Somebody told her that she would have to be requalified as an autistic.
I don't know what once you have autism, it doesn't go away.
Well, I know that they would say she had to have a reevaluation.
They might, because they're looking at level of functioning. Again, having a diagnosis by itself is not enough. Because
like for guardianship, when we went to the
Right.
guardianship process, she had to be seen within a certain amount of time of filing for guardianship and be assessed by a doctor to put what her diagnosis and what her level of functioning was.
Right.
So you probably would have to take
I might have to have some updated testing, but because they're going to look at where she's functioning now. Not, so if your evaluation is old, it's going to show where she was functioning then. So they might need to do some updated testing.
One of the important things about that is when you're looking at Social Security, they want to know onset of disability. So the earlier the onset, the easier the process. So you would go back to that first evaluation as onset of disability unless it is birth. And I recommend birth whenever you can. Okay?
Yeah.
So when you're saying that the criteria are the same, well, you didn't qualify for SSI, then you can be qualified for SSDI.
No, it just depends on, the criteria is the same. The only way that the child would get the SSDI, the money from the SSDI part, is if the parents were retired, deceased, or retired. But they have to meet the other criteria first.
Before age 25.
Yes, that's the other thing. Yeah, before the disability has to be established before the age of 25. So the disability happens after 25, then it won't matter.
So let me ask this question. The disability has to be established before age 25 with the Social Security Department or just?
No, but that's a good question. That is an excellent question because you have individuals who have been living with mom and dad all their life. They've never worked, and then mom and dad, they pass away, and then they end up with sister or brother or somebody else, right? And so this child has been disabled all their life. But how do you prove that? So that child can then draw mom or dad SSDI, because the school records probably have been destroyed and they've never been connected to another agency. So to answer your question is, it might be a good idea to establish that early on or keep those records or whatever, because the school is not going to have them.
I've helped a couple of adult parents with intellectual disabilities at 35 or 40, and we can't find any documentation or records. Regardless of how they present, you do not get any assistance. So it is extremely important to keep records in terms of the school district. They don't care about ARDS, IEPs, they care about
evaluations. Yeah.
FIE, a full individual evaluation, whether it's a reeval, a read, OT-PT report, speech report, vision report, keep those reports.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as reevaluations, if, for example, we're fortunate we have insurance, but if you didn't have insurance and you're not part of all these benefits, then you just have to pay out of pocket to even
No,
get
Social
that.
Security will do evaluations too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you
And they pay for them.
And start the process of getting SSI. Start the paperwork, and then in that process they will send us to.
Well, they're gonna ask you for evaluations, and you want to give them everything you got. And then sometimes if they don't like what you have, or if it wasn't current enough or whatever, they will also send you for evaluations as well. And you don't pay for those, they pay for those. And if you have an open VR case, they often request our records too, because we, again, remember I mentioned in the beginning, we also do evaluations. And so sometimes they shoot us a fax or an email or something, and we have to release that information to them if we've done evaluations.
We had an end of, when our daughter was first diagnosed, it's a tough pill to swallow. So,
right.
And she was very young. So we had an independent assessment done, which, does that add any credibility, one, because it was completely independent of the school district, and two, is that something we should do ourselves if we have that capability? Does it increase the chances of being accepted or not, or is it worse to do it, or just?
It can't hurt, but I don't know if it increases the chances. Yeah. Do you have anything to add? Or?
Basically, if you have any old medical records, I wouldn't go to the expense of doing any additional if you've got longitudinal information about the disability, because that's what they're looking at. And the other thing that she was talking about, especially in childhood Social Security, what they look for in Social Security is what is termed a marked difference between the way your child functions and a typical age mate. And secondary, what they're looking at is their ability for employability. Okay? So that's the difference between what you're looking for as a child that's eligible for Social Security versus an 18 or older eligible for Social Security. Are there any more questions?
One more. Taxable benefits. So let's say that, for example, the individual gets a low-paying job, but the benefits, like if you work for the county or city, your income may be a certain level, but if you looked at their insurance, all these different things, it may easily just push them over that. Do they look at the benefits at all, the benefit package of a? Yeah. It's just whatever that net check is coming home assets. Or gross check.
Liquid assets. That's the term that I use when I'm talking to parents. Liquid assets.
But they can, like I said before, they can earn up to $34,000 and keep that Medicaid.
Right. It's the only reason I ask is because now they're putting all of our insurance benefits as part of our income. They show how much is that worth, and I get a statement each year showing that my medical benefits for my family is worth this amount. Well, that could potentially easily put you over. I mean, and if she's on her own autonomy and she's getting with a good company, even if it's a menial job that doesn't pay well, that is I just wanted to know if that could potentially knock her off of any benefit.
They look at things that you can liquidate to cash for income.
Okay.
That's been my experience.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to thank you again. I'm Cindy Yelverton. I work with the Klein Independent School District. I'm a developmental transition specialist. And I have a background in social services, which is why I volunteer so much information during these meetings. But one of the things that I did do for you is because, we get all this great information about, okay, how do we do these work incentive programs so we can spend down income so we can maintain SSI benefits. That's great and wonderful, but how do I navigate that system? So I do have a handout over here for the Houston Center for Independent Living, the benefit specialist that Ms. Goosby talked about, that will help you, walk you through this process when this becomes a legitimate issue for your young person who is employed. Okay? So I wanted you to have that. And Ms. Goosby's got all kinds of information in here about the new WorkSource solution, which is the vocational rehabilitation services that the Texas Workforce Commission now provides. And I also have over here the rest of our parent information dates. And like I said before, the next one is going to be with financial planners. So if you're really concerned about what to do with financial planning, they will be here to answer that. This gentleman is from the state of Texas and working with, he's a parent of a child with a disability and is working through the Texas process of the ABLE account, which is talking to the parents here is going to be much like that college savings account that you can funnel money into that will not affect state and federal benefits, including SSI, Medicaid, and waiver benefits. Disability Rights Texas, the lawyers are coming to talk about guardianship and the various alternatives to that. Lone Star College System is coming out to talk about their programs that are post-secondary supports for our students. And then the end, we started with Medicaid at the beginning, Medicaid waiver programs at the beginning of this series. We are ending it with another representative from Texas Disability Rights, Terry, who is a nurse and a lawyer. And if you have questions or issues once you're in the system or getting into the system, this gentleman will be able to assist you with that. Yes, ma'am.
Would it be somebody to speak Spanish?
I will talk with our Spanish interpreters. They were here, they weren't at the first one, they were here at the second one. I will make sure that we have someone from that department here the best I can. But I do want to thank all of you all. I have to say that I've heard this presentation 2 or 3 times and I learned something new every time. So that golden nugget, that was awesome. And you're helping a personal friend of mine who I believe I did mess up his Social Security issues. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
See you back again. She's got her cards over here.
Yeah, you have my card.
If you're ever involved with DART and you're having a Social Security related issue, this is who you can contact, and she's close by because she's in Conroe.
Yep.